I am going to be throwing on a Subaru STI Mishimoto oil catch can for my 2014 Mustang. But this is not going to be all sunshine and dandies, so let me explain. The biggest hurdle that we're going to deal with is the fact that this is made for a Subaru STI. So the bracket configuration is going to be completely different, and we're going to have to modify it to make it work.
Just set up the chairs.
And the next question you're probably going to be asking is,
why didn't you just go out of your way and buy the actual one that's made to fit for your car?
well, I like free shit. And if you had an opportunity to get a free Mishimoto oil catch can for your car that was just being blatantly thrown away, you would do anything in your power to ensure you can make this work. So my original plan was to throw the oil catch can right here into this little cavity, and I personally felt that it just fit perfectly right there because it was out of the way and hidden and looked somewhat OEM. The downside about that though is that depending on how low I was able to get with it, the wheel well would be in the way. And my main goal was to ensure that I could reuse these original holes, because the last thing I wanted to do was go ahead and drill into the shock tower. And if you're curious how this thing would be mounted with the two original holes on there, what was great that is it came with a bracket. It actually came with two brackets. Yeah! And this was the original one that I was going to use. So my original goal was to bend this bracket up, push it up against the shock tower, and bolt it up to it just like that. The downside though is if I do that, I would have to flip the bracket around, drill two nose holes into here, which wouldn't be a big deal, and just bolt it right up against the shock tower. But if you look closely, that bracket sits a lot higher than the original holes that I wanted to use. Now the new plan in this video is to add this bracket right here over on the top of the strut tower bolt, and then add the oil catch can hanging from this section right over here. So that gives me an opportunity to plug the hoses right into this section and this section right here. This obviously isn't gonna work. When you look at it, you're like, all right, well, you have it hitting the shock tower right here, but I love the design, I love the way that it looks. How are you gonna make this happen? So the plan is to use a vise and bend the bracket to the point where it clears the shock tower brace, and by doing so, hopefully I will have enough clearance to where I can extend that oil catch can out and it could finally attach into its happy place.
Go to a happy place. Go to a happy place.
You can see this bends downwards. I don't want that. I don't want the catch can to be going this way to where all the oil is sitting on one side. I want it to sit flat. So now I know that this part needs to be bent upwards so it can sit flat. And once I do, I can go ahead and tighten up everything that I need to in order for it to look very, very nice. So far, everything is going exactly to plan. We ended up bending this bracket right here. We took away that 90-degree angle, which I know this doesn't look perfectly, but you gotta remember this did not come with my car in the first place. So we made something work, at least for the meantime.
And when I say that, it means it's never coming off again.
But I feel what is really important to show you guys that you guys really need to know so you guys don't mess this up is you'll see there's two words at the bottom of this catch can. It'll say out right here, then the other side says in. This is important to note because the last thing you want to do is plumb all these lines and they go to the different spots that they're not supposed to go. So it's actually pretty self-explanatory. This is the in right here. This is where the crankcase is out, where the gas vapors come through, and it'll go in to the oil catch can. Then once they go through the catch can, it's going to go out back into the intake manifold. And the next moves we're going to make is take off this hose line right here because we're not going to need this anymore. If you look closely, you can see there's a little bit of oil residue on the inside of this hose line. That's what we're trying to eliminate with this catch can, because with the catch can, all that oil that is flowing through this hose line and being recycled right back into the intake manifold will all just sit at the bottom of this catch can, because that oil is too heavy to be going back through the intake manifold if it's sitting through the baffles on the underside of this can, and by doing so, it'll puddle up right here, and eventually you'll have to change that over time so it doesn't overflow. Now, I don't recommend doing this by any means, but what I'm going to be doing now is reusing an old hose line, which is actually a Mishimoto oil hose line, which is very nice to have just because it goes well with the oil catch can. But here's my issue, is that it is a used hose line, and I recommend always getting new stuff. So eventually, again,
My eventually turns into never changing it because it's working.
Eventually changing this out and getting a black hose line just because I feel like it looks a lot cleaner, and also at the same time too, they could have cracks in it, it could get old. You don't really know actually how old it is to begin with. It's just better to get new stuff while you have the opportunity to do so, because This is not expensive, it's not hard to get, and just go ahead and just change it out with something that where you get a peace of mind to ensure it's not going to start leaking on you or causing any issues. But after examining this, I didn't see really any issues other than it being really dirty, and I cleaned it up and it looks very, very nice to begin with. Another really important note that we have to take into consideration, or else this entire project is completely messed up, is to make sure that we do a perfect cut one time and one time only. And we want to ensure wherever we cut it, it's going to flow nice and easy from one end to the other without there being any kinks. Because if there's any kinks, there's a chance that it could suffocate your engine, and it also can let the air flow smoothly without having to worry about any restrictions of air going from the crankcase to the intake manifold. Everything just seemed to go exactly as planned, and this looks absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that because I ended up doing it myself, but actually, to be honest with you, I really do think this turned out well for something that was not meant to go on this car. Obviously, the catch can is universal, but everything else that went along with it was something that I ended up having to make on my own, and I'm pretty proud of the results. Overall, I think that the hoses actually look pretty good. I didn't think I would really like all the red hoses and such, but it pops out in a subtle way with a little bit of contrast, and I like that. I eventually would like to go to the black hoses, but not entirely sure yet, depending on how these hold up. The only critique I have about what I did here, though, is that there are a few little gaps in between some of these spots, but that's because this hose is really hard to get on here, and let alone some of these locking retaining clips on here were really hard to slide on and tighten on. So I'm about to start the car, see if everything worked as it should, and if nothing seems to be out of the unordinary, I think we did everything right. Seems like these are pretty good so far. I decided to remove the original black Allen head bolts that were in here and replace them with these chrome Phillips bolts inside, because I feel like it just looks a lot better and looks a lot more newer in comparison with what the original ones look like, because the original ones were a lot more faded and it just looked very janky. And I feel that adding these matches with the locking clips on here, as well as the bolts and also the strut tower brace as well, and it just looks a lot more OEM in my opinion. Was this job perfect? Hell no. Am I happy with the results? Absolutely. And the fact that everything worked the way that I planned it just makes it that much more better. I get more excited of the unexpected than the expected, so this just means more to me than going ahead and buying a part that I know will fit versus using your brain powers here and trying to make sure that it does work, because if it doesn't, then you failed. And use those times of failure to learn from your mistakes, so next time you do it, it works out in your favor. So other than that, if you guys have any questions, smack that down in the comment section down below, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.